Well, people everywhere are bracing for what should be a historic decision for President Trump in that Facebook ban decision. Now, whether to uphold or reverse that site suspension of the former president profiles, we're going to learn any moment now. There's a council of sorts that's working on it. Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana, though, joins me right now. Congressman, you say that on Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg that no corporate CEO or their, quote, oversight board should be more powerful than the leaders you elect. The ban's been in place now. Many people think it will be overturned. But what did you mean by that? That they shouldn't have had the power to kick President Trump off the platform in the first place?
Well, Charles, this is a larger conversation about how big and powerful big tech companies like Facebook have become. And what I mean is not whether or not Mark Zuckerberg is more powerful than me, a congressman. I'm talking about that a big tech company or its CEO, or in this case, this oversight board, or what Zuckerberg called the Supreme Court that he's assembled to make these decisions, should never be more powerful than your government. And in this case, we find that Facebook in so many ways has become more powerful than your government and the people that you elect to represent you to make decisions based on policy. So that's what's concerning about a oversight board. Again, Zuckerberg called it a Supreme Court that's made up of many people who are not, the majority of those on this board are not from the United States of America. So you have an American company on American soil who has a board made up of people who are not Americans deciding whether or not one of the most important voices of our time, whether you like him or not, an American president, can post on their platform. That's a dangerous paradigm moving forward, and something that as policymakers, as a congressman, we should do something to look into and take away immunities and protections like Section 230 that allow these companies to grow so big to begin with.
Yeah, you may have to knock them down a peg, particularly as they're leaning toward this sort of one world, the sort of ideology you talked about. But it is interesting as well that many, at least Western leaders, have condemned this move, the banning of President Trump's accounts by these social media giants. They say it's a slippery slope. Obviously, you agree. What's the worst that could come out of it? Let's just say, okay, the board says no, and they keep indiscriminately getting rid of voices, particularly conservative voices, not just here, but in Europe and everywhere else. Where does that lead us?
Well, they could overturn Mark Zuckerberg as well and put Donald Trump back on Facebook. I don't know if Donald Trump will even care at this point. They could reverse the decision, or they could keep the ban in place. I'm not going to celebrate either way. I won't celebrate until Facebook, Twitter, other big tech companies treat conservatives equally in the same way that they treat liberals. I mean, you mentioned a little bit ago in the last segment, Charles, about the LeBron James tweet. If I would have tweeted what LeBron James tweeted, I would have been removed from Twitter. And it's not because I have a bad jump shot. It's because I'm a conservative Republican. And that's the paradigm shift here that we have to recognize, that these big tech companies are now more powerful than your government, and they're making decisions about who can or cannot appear on their platforms, which have replaced the public square today. And that's something that we have to look into. You ask what is the worst case scenario, or what's the outcome of all this? The outcome should be that Republicans and Democrats, for the explicit purpose of strengthening our country and our American values, should strip the Section 230 immunities that these big tech companies enjoy, that have allowed them to become so powerful in America, to make decisions that are not in America's best interest, even though these are American companies that have been allowed to grow on American soil and have enjoyed immunities and protections granted to them by the law.